I want you to get together.
Paul, welcome to the show. I know that a lot of the listeners that are going to be listening tonight have no idea what we're getting ready to talk about. They may have a clue, but some of them are familiar with you. You've been on a lot of interviews lately. Tell people what they should know about you before we get started.
Yeah, my name's Paul. I run a YouTube channel called Understanding Conspiracy. I've had the channel since 2014, and my channel covers a lot of things, all things conspiracy. I'm what I call a scattershot conspiracy theorist more than anything. It's completely Christian based. I was born again in 2014. Just after the channel was started, and I've been growing and learning in faith since then, and kind of getting involved in the conspiracy culture as much as I can, getting to know the people involved. And I'm mainly known for my own work on the Nephilim and the way they looked, and how cultures around the earth have venerated them, and the costumes they wear, and how we can get a common thread throughout those aesthetics and infer what the Nephilim may have looked like. And I think they would have looked like clowns. So that's kind of my shtick. That's been quite well known for. I have a book on that, which published a year ago. I've sold about 5,000 copies. I have a YouTube series, which was starting in 2016 of the same name, which is very visual with 45 episodes in there, still going. I've, like I said, done about 50 podcast interviews on that subject alone. And that's kind of one area of my work. My channel also covers the conspiracy culture itself, how to deal with being a truther, learning things, waking up, the processes you go through, losing loved ones, trying to tell your friends and family, and that general journey, which I think we can all empathize with and have all kind of been through and made mistakes along the way. And I kind of wanted to make a series dedicated to helping people cope with that, and kind of, it's like a false therapy in a way. I'm not a therapist licensed whatsoever, but I have some tips to give just from some experience. So I have a series dedicated to that, and a podcast called The Truth of Therapy Sessions, which is every Sunday. And that's up to 107 episodes now, when I get guests on from different channels to kind of share their journey to waking up and the experiences they've kind of had, as well as just me venting every now and then about my own issues being in this game. You know what it's like. And
Right.
I have call-in sessions with subscribers as well for them to tell their testimonies and journeys and stories too. And it's a bit of a solid community over there. And that's a bit of fun I do every Wednesday. And other than that, I cover everything from spiritual warfare to current events. And I'm also known, a year ago, I had a stint where I was heavily focused on the little season information as well. And I've kind of got well known for that. But I shifted focus for my channel about half a year ago to kind of leave that behind as a main topic of the channel. I was never supposed to be like a little season channel. It was just one of the conspiracies I was trying to understand. You know what I mean? So I kind of got deep into it. And I think I've got a body of work on that now. I understand it. I get what it's all about. And it's there for people to go and look at if they want to kind of like see what all the arguments are for that whole thing. And right now, I'm just going back to the spiritual warfare stuff and concentrating on getting the second book written for the Nephilim Look Like Clowns. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Summarized very
That's
quickly
awesome.
there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I know that that's where I had heard you from, is the Nephilim look like clowns. And I've been in the conspiracy world for a while too. And I would have to say that you're probably one of the first people that I've seen kind of hone in on that side of it. I do remember reading about Patagonia. I remember seeing them talking about like a painted up type Nephilim giant that they saw. But I'm super curious in that research and why, all that. I haven't read your book, and I need to. I'm going to read your book after I interview you. But there's other things too. I know the Satan's Little Season. I actually had JT follows JC on not too long ago to
Yeah.
talk about that. And so like I'm into all kinds of conspiracies as well. I mean, this is what I've been doing, and I even have a conference called SpiracyCon. Next year will be our second year. We'll have to have you there since you're about the conspiracies, man. We'll have to do it. But I'm
We'll see
curious
if you can afford the plane ticket from the UK. We'll see, But right now, that's not something
yeah.
I can fork out for, unfortunately.
Oh
But
yeah.
we'll see. Who knows? Who knows? It's
Yeah, who knows by then? Who knows
a
what the
small
future
conspiracy world,
holds?
isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that like several people have listeners have been said, hey, you have to interview Paul Stobbs. You got to check him out. And so I was like, okay, well, let's do it. I've been wanting to interview you anyway. So the Nephilim Look Like Clowns, the book, it looks like it's behind your right shoulder back there. It looks like the cover for the book
Yeah.
there.
This one right here. Yeah.
And so when I
Go.
hear that, I'm thinking like clowns are creepy. They are very, very creepy, no doubt. But tell me about your research into this Nephilim looking like clowns.
Sure. So I know. First of all, I know what it sounds like. I'm not stupid. I know from the get-go it sounds absolutely insane, and most people who are Christians would say the Nephilim did not look like clowns. The Bible doesn't say that, you know. So what are you talking about? But trust me, I didn't realize when I started this just how much stuff would start flooding out when I just started like digging under the ground. You know, it exploded with information, and it turns out this is actually something that's not actually very well hidden. It's kind of been there the entire time, and it's one of those things that kind of once you see it, you can't really unsee it. So first of all, I want to preface by saying I don't care about clowns. I'm not like a clown enthusiast or anything. You know, I'm not like a juggalo. I don't have posters, or I wasn't like obsessed with the Joker or something when it was. You know, I just don't care. It's just not a thing for me. Like I'm very passive about clowns or clown history. So this is not like born from a fear of clowns or something, or an obsession about them or anything like that. It's just something, a thread that got pulled, and just the whole sweater came apart.
You're not like a bozo and
book about it, you know.
You're not like a bozo interpreter, or not interpreter, like a person that comes and acts like clown for birthdays or nothing. This is, you got no money to make in this whole thing about the clowns looking like bozo. So
Exactly. This is just
Yeah.
one of those things that I just kind of stumbled upon in 2016.
Yeah.
So primarily to summarize the work quickly, I'll give you like an elevator pitch, and then we can go into the details, because I guess I've kind of done this 1,000 times now, you know, and I think I
Right.
got better at narrowing it down to explain it quickly for people, so you can kind of know what you're getting yourself into. But first of all, my book is a gospel trap. So what I'm really doing is I'm using clowns as a good hook for this generation, because it gets the intrigue going to get the gospel to them. Primarily, that's what the book really is. That's what my work actually is. Now, going back to the theory and the idea itself, it's based on the idea that the Book of Enoch, the Watchers who mated with human women, primarily whenever you've seen a presentation in the past, let's say Rob Skiba, classic in the game, you know, he would always show a lineup of giants next to a normal human getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the example he would always use is something like a tanned, long, dreadlocked, brown-haired, muscular Conan the Barbarian loincloth wearing looking beast man with a club or something like this. But he looked very human, and that never sat right with me. Like, I don't think when you mix an angel with a human, you get something that looks human as a result. Not even close, to be honest. When you look at the description of the angels in the Bible, like Ezekiel's vision, or then if you even just consider what a seraphim actually is, a fiery flying serpent. So I would say that is a dragon, you know. I think Gary Wayne made a fantastic case for all of that, you know, and what the dragons actually are, and how they are worth some of the angels that took part in this 200 watchers who mated with human women. And I think when you mix something like a dragon with a human, you would get something that looks like a clown, basically, by our standards. So that's the rough reasoning behind, first of all, the way they look. But also what we do, we explore things like the psychedelic experience, which is the world I kind of came from before I was born again. And in that world, people who take things like dimethyltryptamine, who go to these places, they always generally tend to encounter clown-like entities or jesters. It's a very, very, very common occurrence. And I myself, 2 years sober, when leaving all that behind after being born again and giving myself to Christ, I had a vision where I ended up going back to the DMT realm, and I did see one for myself. So I kind of know they're there. You get what I mean? I've got that personal experience, and I know there's thousands of millions of people who probably have already contacted these things on the other side. So knowing that things on the other side of the veil do look like clowns and or jesters, that's kind of another link that I've got to the idea that, well, the only thing that's on the other side of the veil are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, biblically speaking, if you go off the narrative of what happened before the flood and this mixing of kinds that happened as well. So I had this kind of swimming around in my head in those early days, you know, but I hadn't quite made the connection until the 2016 clown sightings. And when I saw national and international news in the Western-speaking world, you know, the English-speaking world, the Anglosphere, shall we say, on every continent, from Australia to Europe to Canada to North and South America, North America, they were all having this problem of people dressing like clowns running around, scaring people, and it became like a mass hysteria event. And I thought it was odd that it was being covered so extensively by the media, because I knew enough about conspiracy and programming to know nothing gets on that black box in the corner of your room unless it's supposed to be there. Everything's a message and a symbol to these people.
So
and the
just real
obsession
quick,
with
let me
presenting it
interject
to
1 second. No, 1 second here too, real quick, because I just the whole clown idea every year around Halloween, the clowns are, they always have stories about the clowns. There's a clown they've cited here, and they really hype this clown idea up. And um, I'm sure you're going to talk about this, but I'm so curious as now to where who invented the clown? Why do they talk about clowns and all that? But I'll let you keep going. I just wanted to
Sure thing.
interject that this time of year, the clown thing is used in a major way to put fear and terrify people in the cities. I know it has been in our city every year. There's like stories of clowns running around terrorizing people and stuff. So
It's actually
interesting.
happened in the 80s as well. It's happened before. It's not actually a new phenomena. The clown sightings of 2016, it had already happened, I think, in 1986, I think it was, in the Boston area, in Massachusetts. And I think that's where the first kind of event like this happened. But obviously, because we didn't have like smartphones then, and it was more of a I don't know, it's word of mouth spread the fear more than anything, and local news stations kind of covered it, but briefly, and obviously newspaper articles did, but it did spread across the country quite far. But there was stories of men dressed like clowns with vans trying to get children into the van. That was happening quite a lot as well, and that caused a mass panic. The phones were ringing off the hook for all the police stations about seeing these clowns everywhere, So it has kind of happened before. But when I did see this in 2016, that got the cogs turning. It's like there's something about the clown here that is very important. Like, it's not just fun for the kids, and I think it means something. I think it's a symbol, and I think the initiated into these secret societies probably know something about it that we don't, So I kind of just went off that premise with this idea in my head that, well, if people see jesters when taking DMT, and the only thing that can be there are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, that's what a demon is, that's what there's no such thing as ghosts of people or anything like that. That's not biblical at all, then there might be something here to do with clowns and jesters and Nephilim. So I kind of did a cursory search, and what I got was one video from one guy on a very small channel with like 200 subscribers, and he didn't even have clown or a picture of a clown in his thumbnail, but it came up anyway. And he was just talking about the Nephilim giants, but it wasn't a real guy or a real believer. He was someone making fun of us, people who believe in that kind of stuff. And he kind of made like a mock video about the Nephilim, mocking us. And he was like, the Nephilim had white skin and red hair, and there's only one explanation. They were interdimensional killer clowns from out of space. And he showed like the picture from the movie, And obviously, again, he was having a laugh. He was just making fun of us. But I thought, like, okay, so there is something to do with white skin, red hair, clowns, and all this type of thing. And the Nephilim did have these features. That's like the base of a clown: red hair and white skin. That's like, you map onto that anything else you want to add, but that's the base, So okay, so maybe there is something here. And like I said, it took 8 years from that day of making my first video on the idea, and the information just kept coming and coming and coming. So then what I started to do was branch out into other cultures around the earth that don't have a biblical history to the mythos, So just looking at every continent and looking what other religions believe and what kind of they say about the Nephilim and how they depict them. And I started to see a pattern emerge. You get primarily what we call ancestor spirit worship cultures, and there's quite a lot of them on every continent, from India to Australia to Asia to America, north and south, to Britain as well, and to the whole of Europe. It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. A lot of Africa as well. And obviously there's a huge Christian nation in a lot of these places, but they get these old subculture traditions of the original peoples, that kind of maintained within that region. They're usually a very small percentage of the population of each region, because Christianity did go quite far and take over a lot of places, for good reason, because it's the truth. But in some of these practicing cultures that still do these old traditions that are like thousands of years old, passed down orally through generation after generation after generation, you find they all dress the same to venerate, channel, or scare away spirits. And they all have their own reasons. It's called apotropaic, if you dress like something to scare it away. And that's a very common practice. That's what kind of Samhain is kind of based upon, or Halloween's based upon, or have we do today. You dress like demons to scare demons away for winter, or to have a good harvest, or not to affect the ritual. You mimic a demon so it thinks that region has been claimed already, so it stays away, warding away bad spirits. But then other people, most cultures, that's actually quite rare, most cultures who dress like spirits want to be possessed by them. So it's a method to mirror something that is in the spirit realm. And again, this is the most common practice. This is why most cultures in these ancestor spirit worship cultures dress in these colorful costumes. It's to let the demon into them. And then there's a deal that gets made. So you give me the strength of 10 men, and I will eat, drink, kill, whatever you want me to do, so you can feel that experience again. Because the Nephilim are disembodied. They don't have a body. They are wandering in dry places as described by Jesus, you know, and they're seeking rest in you. Wherever they can get into you, they'll get into you, you know, and you can get a legion inside of you if you allow it. You know, these things want to reside in a body because it gives them peace. Because I've been to the DMT realm. Thank God we get to come back after like 10 minutes. I could not imagine an eternity there. As far as I can say, those demons are in a state of perpetual hell living there, you know, being stuck in that realm. And I think the whole game for a demon is to get into a body. And these people who dress like them, mirror them, let them in their body and let them use their body. It's like a transaction. So you can use my nose, mouth, ears, tongue, fingers, everything about my body to feel things again, to taste things again, to smell things again, to satiate those hungers and thirsts you have that you can't satisfy because you don't have a body anymore. But I want something in return. And that's usually the deal. And there's many cultures who do this for many reasons, be it power or information. That's why people do this. And the costumes worn by all these cultures, and again, on my channel, I have a whole series going through different continents, different cultures all over the earth, you know, kind of showing the same pattern emerge. They usually have white face paint, red lips, some kind of red or golden headdress made out of whatever that region has for resources. So ribbons, reeds, twigs, diamonds, jewels, you know, cotton, fabrics, whatever they've got to hand is what they use to build their costume. And it's red hair, white skin, red lips, make the eyes look very big, as much as big as they can. A very colourful costume made of sequins and tassels and frills and whatever they can get. And that's basically a clown costume by the Western standards. And why that look? And then I think it's because, like I mentioned earlier, because you're getting a dragon-human hybrid. And that's what the Nephilim were. And by nature of what that would look like, it would look like a psychedelic, freaky clown monster thing with a big wide smile, because snakes and serpents have very wide smiles from the front because the maw is very large, you know, and many snakes can kind of, it's not like dislocate the jaw like a human, but the jaws open and loosen to allow big objects in, you know, so that's hence why the big mouth, large reptilian bulging eyes with slit pupils. Clown makeup often has a line down the eye for the same reason. Did a big similar thing, and we know they had elongated skulls and elongated features, and the Nephilim skulls we find all over the place are elongated, you know, and I think that's what clowns often wear, a skull cap that makes it like they have a big pinhead with hair coming out the sides, you know. And I think everything about the modern Western clown costume is just our version of what these other cultures are wearing, who do it for a specific reason, to get in touch with spirits, to get in touch with the Nephilim. The only thing about the West is it's a cult here. You're not supposed to know that that's what it's for. Only the initiated into these things kept it a secret within their own societies. Because the problem is with the West, for demons, not for us, but the problem for them is if they brazenly displayed themselves possessing people, someone somewhere who's a Christian is going to cast them out or notice this, or at least stand up to them in the name of Jesus. And that's just not really optimal. So they have to remain hidden. And I think what they've done, they hide under this guise of something fun for the kids, which is a clown. And I think secret societies know this. I think this is why the Shriners have a clown sect within every single faction that they have all over America. I think it's why the Shriners run all the circuses and have done since the very inception of the American circus, you know, at least in the traveling big top tents. I think they know what it's for. And I think the secret to like the music industry, for example, is not to have talent, but it's to dress like a psychedelic clown monster with pale white skin and red hair, and you're going to be elevated. The spotlight's going to be put on you. You will get fame, power, and fortune, because they want people who look like that to be idols for other young, impressionable artists to copy, to make more channels for the Nephilim to get through to our realm. And if people idolize pop artists who look this way, then they'll dress like them, which again opens up more channels into the civilization. Halloween, there's always a popularization of the Joker or a reboot of It or something like this, or a clown serial killer of some kind or something like that. And it's always a new one, it's always a reboot, you know, for the next generation to dress like a clown for Halloween. when the veil is supposedly thinnest between the spirit realm and the physical realm, according to Celtic tradition. And I think this is all done on purpose. I think this is true spiritual warfare. And we in the West are very secularized. God got removed from the equation a long time ago, according to us, even though that's complete nonsense. And as a result, we don't think there's any consequences to dressing like something. We don't see a connection to having to anything spiritual. So we don't believe that. We think it's superstition to think that dressing like something has an impact like that, because people don't believe in the spirit realm, in the West primarily, unless you're a Christian who's usually not dabbling in that kind of thing anyway. So there's a disconnect there, isn't there? I think most Christians wouldn't even think or realize just the extent of the dangers of dressing like certain things and what that could mean to the spirits on the other side of the veil who were just waiting for you to create that kind of channel. But I think the secret societies who had a hand in creating the clown costume as we know it today, and we'll get into that, they know exactly what they're doing. So before I continue and explain the clown costume history, I saw you taking notes. So is there anything you want to kind of prod and discuss before we go on?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, you were talking about the DMT creatures and all that. I was working on a DMT documentary a few years back, and I remember Joe Rogan saying that when he went into his trip, there was these gestures that were like making fun of him while he was there. It was almost like they were the clowns, the comedian gestures or whatever, kind of like making fun of him. And that was interesting to me because I've heard several people that have been on DMT talk about something like a clown as well, like a gesture almost. And you mentioned the Shriners. Of course, they do the big clown circus every year, the Shriner Circus. They even have an Order of the Jesters, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But from what I understand, there's a lot of deviance within that particular order, even more than what may be in the others. And so that's interesting with the Shriners and all that. And also John Wayne Gacy, this guy was a clown, right? I mean, am I right? He was a clown, but he was also a pretty important person in the community. And it just makes me question, why in the world are people dressing like clowns? I've never liked clowns. There's never been a moment in my life where I've been like, man, I want to see that clown, or I want to have a clown at my birthday or any of that. And I don't understand the fascination with clowns to begin with, but they've always been kind of creepy to me. And it makes me wonder, I mean, after hearing what you're saying there, it definitely makes sense that, something like Ronald McDonald would be the face of the Golden Arches and stuff like that. And wild stuff, man. I think that I didn't really have a question so much because I know you're getting ready to go into more about it, but just to back you up on this, the clown, even like juggalos, like you were saying earlier, you're not a juggalo. Thank God. I probably wouldn't be interviewing if you were, but the juggalos, I mean, they've been involved in more crimes and violent behavior and perversion than any people I know. I used to know a bunch of juggalos, and I was not a great guy myself, but I just didn't even like hanging out with the juggalos. They were just like a level beyond where I was ever willing to go or even think about going. That's how far these guys would go with disgusting behavior, I would say, is the main thing.
Well, the Juggalos as well, every year at Halloween, the two main lead singers put on a party or a show at a Freemason lodge, funnily enough, every year at Halloween.
Wow. I did not know that.
And before they were famous, they weren't the Insane Clown Posse. They were the Inner City Posse or something like that. And I think they were very unsuccessful until they started to dress like a clown. And then that shtick skyrocketed them into the fame that they had. And they basically started a cult. But to the Juggalos, I think there are many who give them a bad name. I think a lot of them are poor people from impoverished areas of America, let's say, who working class, primarily. And I think they are looking for a sense of identity and belonging, and often that kind of thing has given them that. So I don't think many of them are all evil, but certainly I think some of them do play into the extremes because the lyrics are about hatchet men slicing people up, you know what I mean? So I think some of them take it seriously, some of them think it's like a funny joke or a metaphor, and I think it gets a bit blurred of like, are they all bad? And also some of them just kind of looking for that sense of belonging, and I would say many of them are ignorant of what I've just said. They don't have a clue that what they're doing is any way spiritually impactful to them. you know, or that
I'll-
letting in
yeah.
the letting in demons. Or I think they just think it's community primarily, you know, because I've had a lot of jugglers reach out, you know, and some of them seem pretty down to earth, some of them seem completely unhinged. It's a bit of this, it's a bit of that, you know. So I think that's just humans, unfortunately. I think that's just people in general. So I don't want to just put it down to the clown costume necessarily. But for another example, yeah, John Wayne Gacy, a fascinating example, and I do a case study in my second book on him. He only started dressing like a clown halfway through his spree. He didn't actually begin dressing like a clown. It turns out he is a member of the Moose Lodge, I think, in his region, and I think it was at Chicago, I think is where he's based. And he that is a Freemasonic lodge at the end of the day. And he was only about a half-hour drive away from his local Royal Order of the Jesters faction. And he's only about an hour and a half drive to Indianapolis, where the headquarters of the Royal Order of the Jesters are. He was caught by two federal agents in a conversation talking to two men who were basically human traffickers, worried they were about to get caught. And it turns out he was involved in human trafficking as well, and that's where some of his young male victims came from. He's supposed to kill 33 young men right there in the name, you know. And I think it's odd that when he was very connected with like local politics. He was in charge of the lighting in the city as well at one point, you know, and I think he was
Chamber of Commerce too, right?
Yeah, I think he was seen wearing the Secret Service ring as well with an S on it. So he was well connected in politics and of the area, and it seems like halfway through his killing spree and human trafficking spree, which is not really talked about, but it seems like that was going on, he began to dress like a clown. So I think he discovered sooner or later that there's a connection there, and it helps him communicate with demons and in some way facilitate what he's doing more in, or I don't know what, but he figured something out, or maybe he was informed by the jesters he was working with in human trafficking, and maybe that's when he adopted the method of dressing like a clown to gain more power and influence or something. I don't know, a contract with a demon of some kind, because the Royal Order of the Jesters, yes, have been caught human trafficking. There's FBI records you can go and find, and I've got them all in the book.
Really?
And all the money the Shriners earn from the circuses, which is supposed to go to the hospitals for sick children, where they offer free healthcare for like minor illnesses and diseases. Turns out somebody did some studies. I think she's called Sandy Frost. She wrote a book called Vampires of Charity. And she basically is consistently like exposing all of their tax returns like all the time and following where the money's going, and none of it's going to the hospitals. It's all going to the Royal Order of the Jesters to fund these parties where they got caught trafficking prostitutes across state lines. Some members got caught impregnating 13-year-old girls on a fishing trip in South America. It's kind of, these people are debaucherous and evil in every respect. So that's only what the people that got caught. There was two whistleblowers who exposed everything that was going on there, how terrible it actually is. The Jesters have shut down all their bulletin boards and websites and everything like that as a damage control. You can't find anything on them now. But yeah, what they were caught doing and what they're doing with taxpayers' money at the end of the day as well. They're not paying tax, you know. She showed it all. It's really, it's just funny because they can't even, like, she's actually technically correct, so they don't come after her because it would just shed a spotlight on it all, you know. It's tax avoidance at its finest and borderline tax evasion, you know, which is a slight difference, but she's basically saying they're corrupt as hell, every single one of them. And that money you donate to the hospitals does not go to the hospitals. It goes towards funding these horrible events. And yeah, it is odd, isn't it? Why is it a step above Freemasonry is the Shriners? First of all, the Shriners, you know, are supposed to be a Muslim-themed, Arabic-themed order of the Fraternal Brotherhood, but they seem to have Western clowns within every single faction. It just seems such an odd, disparate mix, doesn't it? Why are they in charge of circuses, of all things, you know? But then when you understand the method that they're actually doing here, these are occult practitioners at the end of the day, and I think they are intimately linked and communicating with the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim on a daily basis. But it's no secret in our community, you know, that's what they're really doing. This is Mystery Babylon. This is Mystery Wisdom schools masquerading as a faux Christianity or Luciferianism in some way, you know, and Albert Pike himself admits it. We know that's what it really is, so I'm not surprised that they are using this costume as a means to communicate with probably entities they work with, they're in business with, you know. And I think secret societies are physical foot soldiers for the spiritual war that we're in, and I think they answer to the Nephilim in the other realm. And I think the Nephilim answer to their fathers, the angels, and those angels answer to their master, you know, and I think it goes up and up and up in like a hierarchy of a military regime. There's generals and there's privates, you know, and I think the secret societies, the humans, are like the lowest rung of the ladder in the spiritual war when actually gets down to it, you know, where they think they're so great, but they're nothing to these monsters, you know. But I think they use the costume to communicate with them. I think that's their method. That's how they get in touch with and get messages, probably. And then a step above shrining, you can be invited, only invited. You can't ask to be a member of the Royal Order of the Jesters. Why is being a jester the pinnacle of Freemasonry? That's such an odd symbol until you realize it represents the very things that they venerate and worship and idolize and work with. So it's kind of like getting to their level in a sense. Do you get what I mean? And when you get up to there, it is pure depravity. And why wouldn't it be when that's what the demons want in exchange for power, money, and influence and fame and the rest of it? It's a tale as old as time itself, really. That's what it's always been like. You will be as gods, you know, just do this thing for me, or say this thing, or drink this thing, or eat this thing. You know, it's always the same message from these snakes, you know, these dragons, these serpents. So I'm not surprised that that's what is involved with Freemasonry. So I think I touched on everything you kind of mentioned there. And yes, let's come back to it. Children do not like clowns. Like 1 in 50 maybe. But they're not the norm. They're the outlier. Okay, so why do we market them to children? Well, it's a good mask. It's a good cover, isn't it? But realistically, people do not like clowns. Not at all. And I think also it might be worth mentioning that they are kind of in the game of inspiring young people and more people to dress that way too. So in 2023, I think it was, there was L's Fashion Week, and it's like a big gathering of catwalks in Europe, you know what I mean, to showcase fashionistas and designers and stuff. And clown core was the theme in 2023, and they're saying this is going to be the latest trend. This is what everyone's going to start dressing in clown-like clothing and fashion. And what you saw on the runway was absolutely ridiculous, but what trickles into the outlet stores a year or so later is like a watered-down version. But they are literally trying to dress people like clowns now, is what I'm trying to say. And we have to wonder why. When you consider my work, it raises an eyebrow too. You know, it's not actually as fun as you think it is. And there is a popular trend in younger generations called clowncore, where they do dress like a clown, maximalist clown fashion, as a legitimate fashion choice just to go out walking around in the street in, you know, and that got very popular on TikTok. It had this little underground subculture. And you'll find, I actually made an episode about this. I think it's episode 43 or 44, but it's specifically about just the last decade alone of clown media, of what they've done to us. And that's just in 10 years. It is exponentially large. It's huge. Like, they are pushing that on people in a big way. And I think they're making that push to make people more heavily demonized. And I don't think ignorance of the spiritual law makes you immune to the spiritual law. That's a popular phrase I've said quite a lot. That's something I've kind of coined. I think if you dress like a clown, your intentions to entertain children or not, you're messing with fire. There's consequences.
I agree, man.
You know,
I agree with that. My uncle was actually, this is crazy, but my uncle was the potentate of the shrine in Evansville, Indiana, before he passed. And he was a member of the Order of Jesters. And it's crazy because of my uncle. I never knew any of that while he was alive. This is, after he passed, is when I got offered to join, which they don't normally recruit, but my uncle was very well respected in that, and they actually took me in the lodge, showed me his picture there, and I always thought my uncle was a great guy. I didn't know him that well. I mean, I knew that him and his wife, they never had kids. They would, travel a lot, and they were well thought of in the community, like super well thought of. And I had no idea. So I'm thinking, oh, this is all just fun and games or whatever. Well, I almost joined, and this conversation may not be happening had I done that, but thankfully I came across a video. And the weird thing is, so too, when you say it is a higher order, you have to be a 3rd degree Freemason to join the Shriners. They were willing to bypass that because they were just going to let me go ahead and join and automatically have that membership just because of my uncle. Because I do have like a lot of family that in the past that was involved in that. I came across a video online of a man named William Schnoblin talking about Freemasonry, and after I heard that, I was like, oh man, if anything he's saying here is remotely true, like this is not what I want, right? Like in my mind, I was getting ready to join an organization that I could potentially have lots of business contacts and maybe not pay any interest on my loans, and it was going to be like kind of just a good business thing. But I don't think a lot of people realize what they're getting themselves into. And I'm wondering, I think that now looking back, if you're in the Jesters, you probably do know. I always thought my uncle was a Christian dude, everything like that. But there's people that are joining these groups now that really just have no idea what they're getting themselves into. I almost joined without having any idea. I would have been a Shriner and I would have no idea what I was actually getting myself into. I think
Yeah.
they just assumed that I probably knew because my uncle was up in it. They probably like, well, this guy's a shoe-in. Let's get him in here. But I had no idea. Like, I literally had no idea.
I think membership is waning of these old orders, to be honest. I don't think it is what it used to be, I think they are maybe stretching and doing more recruitment
Breaking the
campaigns.
rules.
I think most people who are joining these days don't know what it's all about until they're too deep. And I think that's how they do it these days, And I think every organization like this has members that are useful idiots who really genuinely think it's about charity and brotherhood and business contacts, And I think that's, as far as they're concerned, they can be in the Freemasons their entire life, and that's all they ever saw. And that's all they ever understood. But I think when you get to higher levels, they're looking for people who, are they cool or are they not? It's that kind of thing. Like, are they on our side or are they not on our side? And I think it's a certain type of person who wants to join an order that gets them ahead in the world. You know what I mean? And I think they're already getting members in who are looking for power, looking for influence, and maybe we can use them. And usually that's when they get blackmail on them because they made them do that thing to get that money or get that position or something. And then I think many of them get too far in and then can't go back, and then they realize, well, this is just who I am now. This is what I'm doing. And I've done some terrible things, and this is where I am, and this is my life now, So they own it, they go full into it. But there's plenty of examples of ex-members who gain a conscience. And all those members who didn't really realize what it was all about, suddenly seeing like one of these parties I was mentioning and saying, like, these men have wives at home. This is supposed to be a Christian. Like, what are you doing? And there is a man who did just that. And I've got it in the book. And he literally naively sent a letter to the head of Shrining, like Shriners International, saying, it's come to my attention that some of our brothers are doing this, having these orgies, you know what I mean, and cheating on their wives and doing things with each other and stuff like this. And he's this big long letter about how this is not becoming of a Christian something. This is not what the brotherhood should be about. We should be doing this. And then he got shut down massively. Like, he got scrubbed, ignored, everything removed. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those. But it was too late. I think that they didn't realize that when it's on the internet, it's permanent. There's no going back then, But they've all denied ever since. And he obviously was gobsmacked to realize they're all in on it, and it's kind of, he was so naive, he didn't realize, and he was a high member.
I knew they had orgy stuff, and I'll tell you why. But like, when I was volunteering at this event and they had the building or whatever, I went in there to look for more chairs or something, and I'm seeing like this giant orgy going on between like some of the members and the other wives, and like pat swapping. It was like a big pineapple party going on up there. So I knew that some of that stuff probably went on at the time. But yeah, you're right. Some people have no idea. Like, they're thinking they're getting into the Christian organization, and that's it, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, there was 2 whistleblowers from within the Jesters who posted on bulletin boards and were,
so they were all they went into the Jesters before they even knew. That's wild.
But yeah, so it does happen. But I think now they're extremely stringent about who they're letting in now, because they don't want to let anything out. It just, secret societies are supposed to be secretive. It's in the name, and it really doesn't get any more secretive than the Jesters now. Yep. You cannot find out anything about what's going on with them anymore. But you do have these records from like 2008. 2010 of what they got caught for then, before everything got shut down and removed and scrubbed and buried, and like articles removed and everything. And now it's closed doors, and I think they only recruit 13 people a year, and they have to, like, I think they're extremely selective now, like extremely. It's the most exclusive club of Freemasonry, and that again appeals to a certain type of person. I need to be a jester. I need to be up there in that club. It's, you know, and it's kind of, I think I'll do whatever it takes to get there. And they're looking for people who will do whatever it takes, you know, because that's what they're into. They're into the worst, darkest, most heinous things, you know, and they get away with it, and they use taxpayers' money to fund it all, you know. And this is what I said, you can trace it all over. But again, I can't prove any of this. This is just me speculating, you know, disclaimer. Like I'm not saying names here necessarily, because we don't know. We really don't know. We just have these odd whistleblower events and court cases and FBI records of what happened and the punishments some of these sex traffickers got. You know, and these were like judges, you know, like county sheriffs that got caught, and a judge and his clerk like got caught trafficking prostitutes across nation lines up into Canada. You know what I mean? And it's kind of, these were well respected members of the community who were involved in this, you know, and they got caught. And if you look at the court results as well, like they basically got a slap on the wrist and got to sit on the naughty step and pay a fine. You know, that's all
they probably
got.
Got another job. Yeah, they probably got moved somewhere, made another job or whatever. And that's the way it always works. It seems like it's crazy, man, to think that, you know, the Jesters, first off, is even a thing that is considered to be at that level, because it seems stupid. You look at it from and maybe that's designed that way. You look at it from the outside, it's like, oh, just a bunch of old men, you know, getting together, acting silly, dressing like clowns, and that's really all it is. But it's definitely deep when it comes to what's actually involved. I really am thankful for like people that have whistleblowed if what they're saying is true. I would love for it not be true, because I loved my uncle. He was I thought he was a great guy, but I was young. You know, how do I know he's not going to include me in parts of his life? My dad didn't become a Freemason. He actually moved, and so I got to see him a couple times a year anyway. And thankfully, I see a lot of trauma in certain parts of the families that are involved in these societies, and I want to be very careful, because there are people that are in it that might be listening. Actually, you know, there's people that I know very well that are very, very, very high up in Masonry, and I hope that they would respect me enough to know that like what we're saying here isn't trying to be inflammatory or defamation or anything. What we're trying to do is just kind of get to the bottom of a lot of this stuff, because it's clear that our country has been there's people in it that would love to get everybody underneath blackmail, you know, the whole nation under blackmail if they could. So I try to be careful about how I say it. Plus, you know, I've never been a Mason. I've never been in the lodge. I've never, other than when they invited me in to try to get me to join, you know, show me and my uncle's pictures and all that stuff. And I've never been in one of these, so I can't really speak. Like, just like you, we don't know for sure, but we just know based off of information that people that have supposedly come out of it come forward and talk about, and also based off legal a law thing, something that was you know, documented that actually happened. So we're not trying to be that, but I would love to. I'd love to hear your thoughts too, just before we wrap up, because the clown thing's fascinating. I'm going to put a link in here for your book so people can get it and check it out, because I'm getting ready to buy it myself. Also, I wanted to talk about the Satan's Little Season thing, because I had JT Follows JC on not that long ago. He gave me a pretty good rundown of basically what the Satan's Little Season is all about, and I've been, you know, looking into it a lot myself. How does any of this tie into your Nephilim research, and if so, how?
Well, yes and no. I wouldn't say you necessarily have to connect the two in any way. Demons have been a problem since before the flood, and they're going to remain a problem until the new heaven and earth, you know. So if you want to slap in 1,000-year reign in between that timeline or anything like that, I don't think even if that was the case and Christ had already reigned for 1,000 years, the demons were still here, but they were probably rendered completely ineffective and useless, and perhaps were practically just disconnected from humanity for 1,000 years and were just left to rot and go insane in that DMT realm with no one communicating with them anymore, possibly. But it does seem like even during that time on Earth, there were nations who were not following Christ, if you want to go off that theory, and they didn't get rain. They suffered drought because they didn't make the pilgrimages to New Jerusalem, and you know the consequences of that were that those nations would suffer from drought. So, and that's in Zechariah, I believe. So there's you know, there may have been nations who were still communicating with them. The China is called the land of the dragon, and there's huge swaths of desert in that region, and there's deserts all over the earth. Perhaps that's where these nations were, these regions, and perhaps that's why there's something to be said for the demons wandering dry places. Maybe that's what it was really all about. So I think that I don't think there's a connection to my work, really. You don't have to make one. I think it stands alone as just a spiritual warfare issue, primarily. And we didn't even get into where actually the clown costume comes from, but there is a whole...
let's do that instead, because we can do another Tartaria / Satan's Little Season show all together. I just wondered, because I know that I had a guest on. He was Guy Anderson. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids and all that. He's a Mason for like 20 years, and he was saying that he found documents that the Masons are actually part of the cover-up of Tartaria. And so I didn't know if you had anything like that, but we can talk about that stuff a whole nother time.
I myself have made lots of videos about that. The job of secret societies is also to cover up the history and to claim a lot of these buildings that they built them and founded. So he's probably riffing off a similar idea, that secret societies, the job was to destroy the old world, make a new history for us and a new science for us to believe, which is evolutionary space stuff. So they came up with all those schools and those schools of thoughts to make people blind to the fact that we're squatting in the remains of a glorious kingdom that Christ built on the earth physically, before obviously Satan was let loose for his last season at the end of time, just before the final great white throne judgment, which is the theory says we are there. So secret society's jobs are very specific, hide the history, but they also at the same time are still working with Satan and the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, the demons. So my work would still fit. Do you get what I mean? Like, that never changed. And then there's a lot to be said about the missions of Mystery Babylon and what the goals have been throughout the years and what the great works really are, the great work, as they call it, the great, you know what I mean? So, but we can talk about the Little Season another time if you want, but I don't go around doing...
We'll do like next month, we'll get together and do it again. That would be good.
Maybe, but I don't do Little Season like presentations anymore, to be honest, because it's... Look, I think it's a great idea. I think it has a lot of weight, and I'll always leave room to be wrong, but I think that is the case personally. But that being said, when I first started to talk about that topic, it drew me in because it was exciting and interesting, and it is fascinating, and it's very interesting, and I get that. But it got away from me, I'm not going to lie. And before I knew it, we were getting thousands of views on every video. Communities were being built everywhere, little season communities. And it seems like what happened is a brand new denomination got made and a new church got made based on this idea.
It's very divisive. It can be very, very divisive, big time. And I agree with what you said earlier. The mission's still the same anyway. But you're right. I mean, it forms its own denomination in a way.
And the last thing Christianity needs is another denomination. And I didn't want to, maybe I am responsible for that indirectly, but that's not what my intentions were anyway. And it's kind of, I'm not looking to separate myself from the body of Christ by isolating myself into a new denomination that separates me from everyone else. I think as long as you profess that Jesus Christ is king, and he rose from the dead, then you're my brother in Christ as far as I'm concerned, whatever denomination you choose to be under. But I'm non-denominational. I don't want to start one and become a part of one or be seen as a member of that community necessarily, though I respect all the people in there and I love the information and I get it. But things also got very strange. That tends to happen with these movements. It was definitely, I think there was it got fed up a little bit. I think co-option started to happen. I think heavy attacks started to come towards me and my family behind the scenes. And I think people were seeking to hijack the movement for themselves because they saw money, and a lot of other things as well. And I think a co-option happened that people wanted to own the movement and be seen as the leaders, and they didn't like me. And when they got to that level, I was like, I'm out. I'm not interested in this. My channel is Understanding Conspiracy, not the Little Season. It's not about just one thing, and it never was supposed to be. So I took a back foot. I've come out and I've let that community just roll and do their own thing. But I did my work. I did my part for that. I've got plenty of interviews explaining this in the best way I can. I talked to Eddie Bravo about it at one point. I got to relative David Rodriguez as well, Nino Rodriguez. I got to him.
I was actually supposed to go on that show with you. He asked me that day. He's like, I'm getting ready to interview this guy. Nephilim looks like clowns. He's like, you want to come on with me? I was like, I couldn't at the time. I was like, dude, it sounds fascinating. Hopefully it's a good interview, but I can't this time. And so I remember that. That was like I don't know, a year ago, maybe like
something
6-7
like
months
that.
ago.
Half a year ago. I did both with him. I did the little season and then the clown stuff, so we had a bit of both. But I said I've done what I can to explain and understand that idea as much as I possibly can. And a lot of people in that community are now attacking me. They're confused why I left. They think I'm some sort of agent shill or something now because I'm not continuing to talk about it. And all I can say is it's those people are the reason I left. Because I'm not
people
looking
don't
for
understand.
That.
They don't understand. They don't, because I've been there, but not with that. But I was friends. I don't know if you know this, but I was friends with Rob Skiba. Like I think we started doing some stuff together in like 2016. But it became a denomination, just like all the little flat Earth. It was like a weird denomination. It was like a flat Earth, Hebrew root, something all mixed together as this denomination, and it started co-opting and like you were talking about, and like people really wanted control of that, and it was becoming really, really, like, in my opinion, it got infiltrated, and people really wanted to have their claws in that whole thing. And same with me. My family was getting a lot of spiritual warfare behind doors. There was just so much going on with that. And I agree with you. We have to be united, but it doesn't have to be about all these fringe topics. These fringe topics I think are important to talk about and think about. But if that's what unites you under the banner, it's going to ultimately be a horrible unification. It's not going to be right. It's not going to be what it's supposed to be. And I like being able to get along with everybody. I mean, if you believe in Satan's little season, I have respect for you just like I do somebody that believes in whatever. Like if we can have a conversation.
You see, I started to see in the movement, the little season, that a lot of members of the Little Caesar community don't have that respect for people who don't believe what they say. And, and for a while that was my side. And it's like, you're not giving us a good look here. What are you doing? Why are you arguing with your brothers and sisters in Christ and literally like talking down to them like they're children because you think you got some new knowledge that makes you better than them in some way, And that was happening, and arguments were happening, and the whole debate me thing started arising, and it's kind of, this is not what we're supposed to be doing with each other as Christians. Like, this is not what this should have done to us. And it's kind of, tell your brothers and sisters about the idea and let them sit with it, but don't argue with them about it. Like, this is not something that should be breaking us apart even further. And it just didn't sit right with me in the belly, right in the seat of the soul. You know what I mean? I could feel something, a gut feeling about it. And I was like, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I intended. This is not what I want to be associated with or seen as somebody who's a part of that attitude and that behavior. It's just not me. That's just not who I am. And it's a shame, because even when you and David Carrico were talking about it, and obviously David went in on it, and he obviously didn't like the idea that a Jesuit kind of formed a preterist
he hates the idea. Whereas me, I'm like, I'm like, man, it like seems like, I mean, it could be possible. I'm not gonna like go against it, but like I respect him. He's older than me and all that. But I would say I'm probably more open minded to most of that stuff. But yeah, he went in. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
People in our community were foaming at the mouth about that, and they wanted to attack, and they wanted to kind of like, it's like, oh, he doesn't really listen to our points and all this type of thing, and getting angry about this. And it's kind of, well, what did you expect? Like, even if this is true, it goes against everything that most Christians have been taught their entire lives, and we have to be sympathetic to that. We can't expect them to just suddenly come to our side. And look, I don't like using the word because it was used against us quite a lot by Rise, the channel RSC, and that we were a cult. And he started like comparing us to the NAR movement, the New Apostolic Reformation, is that what it's called? The Seven Mountains thing, and it's kind of like, we're nothing to do with that. We're literally just discussing, the Bible says this here. We could be those people. Somebody's got to live during that time. That's basically our entire argument, summarized very quickly. Yeah. It's biblically grounded, and we could be those people. What if, but a lot of people were calling us a cult. And I can see at the time people getting angry about that, but you were acting like a cult. You were behaving like one. You had in-group preference, and you were treating us like charismatic leaders. And it was getting to this point where it was like, I can't be in this. Like, for my
Yeah,
own poor wife's sanity, I can't be putting her through this. This is not what I intended when I started talking about it in my car as an interesting idea. You know, it really did get carried away so rapidly. And now I don't like what it's become at all. And the people who are like the leaders in that thing now, like, the less said about them, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not interested anymore. It's just become it's become a circus as far as I'm concerned. It's getting ridiculous. And it's exactly like you described with the whole Rob Skiba flat earth situation. It's the same pattern, and I could see the pattern. I saw it then. Same with the Mandela effect, when that kind of became a thing. You know, it gets hijacked, co-opted, and directed to become an absolute circus and a cult every time. And that's what discredits it. And that's not, and it's a shame, because there's a lot of truth in what Rob Skiba was talking about. And I think there's a lot of truth in this little season idea and this concept. And it's getting drowned in a bad show, like bad actors behaving badly and presenting it terribly, and the rest of it, you know, and becoming behaving like a cult. And from the outside, that makes people go, I don't want anything to do with that. And it's a real shame, because there were people who were really thinking about Christ because of it too. He was bringing people to Christ in a big way. But I think the main problem I've noticed, and I'm being quite candid about it now, well after the fact, you know, but I think many of the members of the Little Season community came out of church. If they came out of futurist, dispensationalist, rapture now churches. And I think that attitude that generates in people, that religious zealotry, that fervor, that waiting for the thing to happen so I can finally be out of here attitude, you know, I think it carried into the Little Season community, and they left one eschatology for another and went just as extreme into the other. Did you get what I mean? And hijacked it and turned it into another church, because that's all they kind of know. That's what they're in. That's their dogma. And they just transferred that dogma from rapture to Gog Magog war. Do you get what I'm saying? And I could see those members coming into the community who were hijacking it, turning it into another church. And it's you either with us or you're against us type of attitude. And it's kind of like, I'm against you then, I guess. It's bye. You know, I'm not interested in that, you know.
It's funny because like part of the reason that David and me made the video, and probably the reason David continues to do it, is because of the comments. Like, it wasn't even something on our radar before we started getting people saying we're heretics because we don't believe it. And we're like, what are you even talking about? Like, we go back and look at all the different eschatologies that have existed over time. And obviously this is a newer one because it couldn't have been before now if this is actually that time, but we'd never heard of it before. But people were literally hundreds of people just flooding the comments that we've never even known before. You guys are heretics because you don't believe in Satan's little season. And then we're like, what is this? And so you try to, you know, you make a video because you think, you know, like at the time we didn't even really, I could say I didn't. David might have understood more about what it was about, but I hadn't really researched it. And I'm not one to like really step on it unless I research it. At the time, my understanding was it was basically preterism. I didn't realize exactly what was going on in the whole thing. So I tried to take the time to understand it a little bit, but you're right, man. Like just the reactions from people prompt a lot of the hate they get too. Like they probably make people make these videos by the amount of like disgusting comments that they leave on other people's videos about it, because like I didn't even care to talk about it, but we got so many comments about it that we're heretics because we didn't believe it, that we're like, let's make a video, let's talk about it. And I think that first video we probably didn't have, we were probably talking more about preterism than we were talking about anything. I don't think that it was more, I don't even think we were really talking about Satan's little season. We didn't really quite understand it at the time. But yeah, I mean, that's the reason we probably made the video. Like they're probably the reason, you know, like their comments drove the video to be made.
I mean, I do want to say, you know, like I said, they hate it when you compare preterism to the little season, because it is actually very different. It's on the surface, it can sound like preterism, but it's really not. Like there's a big difference, you know, when it comes to
now I
timelines
understand
and what
that.
it means.
Yeah.
So I get why the hackles got up when people were saying that, you know, and it's kind of, they're always misrepresenting us. Everyone is like, and it is true, when people try to debunk the little season theory, they tend to miss our points completely. You know, and they debunk preterism, which is easily debunkable. So it's kind of, this is the problem, is that you're not actually arguing, you're just using our title and then debunking a straw man, which is not what we're saying. So people did get angry about that. I kind of get that. But again, I think there was a better way to deal with it. Absolutely. Because like I said,
we probably shouldn't have made a video about it, to be honest. And you're right. There's so many different people talking about it too. And they all have different ideas. Like there's this one guy, I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to promote him, but he was just a jerk, man. Like, he would just troll every Facebook thing I did. He made videos about us. He came out to our location one time, and I was out of town, and you know, David wasn't available either, and he got like acted like, you know, we were some kind of evil people that didn't want anything to do with any of this, and like literally started at least half of his videos for like a month were trying to attack us underneath the banner of Satan's Little Season. And in my opinion, this guy was all over the place, like completely unstable. And so that was like my first taste of Satan Little Season was this guy.
Yeah, well,
and he's like pretty big in
first taste. Yeah, probably not the greatest. I get it though. That did start to. I noticed those characters too, you know, and a lot of them were attacking me just for being in the Little Season because they didn't like the way I did it. You know what I mean? It's kind of that we don't trust him. It's like, well, why is he the one that's getting all the views and getting on these platforms when it should be us? You know, like I've been doing this longer than he has apparently. So I don't even know who you are. I don't know.
It's probably the same guy we're talking about. We're probably talking about the same guy because it's the same.
Maybe there was a few. I had a few people though, not just one person, and of many genders. You know what I mean? It seemed it was odd because I was in the thick of it. You know, I think people were looking at me to be the ambassador for the whole thing, and one wrong move, and it's like, oh, you're anathema now. You know, it's that kind of thing. It's like, look, I'm just a person doing the best I can here to convey an interesting idea that's engaging, you know, without losing people in the process. And I talk about this. I talk about this on my channel. Like, there's a lot of people in the conspiracy world who are just terrible at trying to explain things to people who should not be out there on platforms trying to explain this because they give us a bad look and they turn people away from the truth, you know. And I mean, my tips for truth is about how to present it properly. And you do have to be calm and don't call people names, don't offend people, don't shout at them or stalk them, or don't ramble too much. Slow down a little bit, you know, and be humble, accept you could be wrong about some things and have an actual conversation with people. And maybe the listeners will be open to hearing what you have to say, but some people just haven't got a clue. And yeah, unfortunately, again, I think it's true. Of all my research, and I was there for a while, I think I've seen enough to say there's a lot here. This could actually genuinely be the case. And I'm willing to let it be the truth. I always leave room to be wrong, you know, because I can't fully know. Of course, yeah. So I'll always leave that room. Like I think it's true so far, and I'm all for it, and my work's there to support it and let people go find it if they want to. But I can't let it be my focus anymore because I cannot be associated with as being a leader in that community because of this issue, this major issue, you know. So I don't want people listening to think like, oh, he's against a Little Season all of a sudden and they'll start coming after me. It's kind of like, no, I'm still on board. I just didn't like what the community became. Like I couldn't. It was insufferable in many ways, and and you know. Again,
it's wisdom, man. It's wisdom.
I think there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah.
I started to get a lot of money from the ad revenue, you know, and I realized like the wolves are circling and they want a piece of this. I could tell, and I was like, take it. This is wrong. Something's wrong about this now. Like, I'm not interested in this. And I think a lot of people got into it to get on like to ride the gravy train. I think that started to happen as well. Unfortunately, it's kind of like, look, just take. I don't want that money. I don't want that kind of money. I don't want to be involved in that. Like, this is not what my channel was supposed to be. But it became too focused on it to the point where everything else was suffering. I wasn't talking about anything else, and it's kind of, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is I want to keep it. I have people to reach in places which this topic is not going to reach them. I have people who are suffering from spiritual warfare issues that need to hear something relatable to them, you know, and that's what my channel was supposed to be. So like I said, that's where I am now with it. And if you want to hear a presentation, go and watch one of the ones I've already done. But that's kind of me done with the Little Season. I've made promises that I'm just not going to be that guy anymore. I'm not going to be the guy. And I get people asking me, when are you going to start talking about it again? It's like they're baiting me to come back in. And I don't trust it. To be honest, I don't trust it. I can't trust it as far as I can throw it. I feel like something's being set up big in that movement now for it to fall in a big way. And I don't want to be there when it collapses. I don't want to be there the day that all comes crumbling down, like around, because I feel like a lot of people are going to be ruined as a result of whatever's coming in that movement. Like I said, I think it's been
wise.
fed up. I think it's been co-opted. I think it's being controlled, and I think it's going towards a big explosive. I think it's possible like something could happen where they're going to be used as a scapegoat for something else. Like I don't want to be there when that happens, and I hope the people in that community are very well aware of just what they're involved with, like what's going on. Like it's not what it seems in many ways. It really isn't. But that is to say the information is wrong. It's the people who have got control of the information that's the problem now. Like, and that's what always happens. That's how this always goes down in like a conspiracy topic. And like I said, that's just my friendly warning from somebody who knows what they're talking about. Like that's what it is. And I never wanted to separate myself from the rest of the body of Christ over eschatology. That's not that's a bad idea. So there's my summary on it, you know.
Yeah, and they would call you controlled opposition. As they call me controlled opposition. Anytime anybody is good at what they do, they call them controlled opposition. But I think the people calling the people controlled opposition might actually be the ones that are the ones who are controlled, because it's apparent to me that like you said, every movement has a element of that once it starts growing. As soon as it starts growing, boom, send them in. That we gotta make it happen. Or they could have been some of the ones that were some of the first people there to try to like kick that off so that they aren't as trackable. I don't know how it works. I've never gotten a check from anybody telling me to talk about this or that. I've had people try to give me things to talk about specific topics, which is interesting. There's several I can tell you off air some of the topics that I've been offered money to take and run with. Satan's Little Season's not one of them, but there's been a couple. But yeah, man, it's crazy the way all this stuff works, and really, it's good to talk to you and ask you about these things. I'd love to have you back again to talk more about the Nephilim clowns thing, because I know we didn't get to get into much. And plus, I'd like to read your book too. That way, when I do interview you, I'll really hone in on some of the things I'm curious about in all of this. So make sure you guys do buy the book. It's in the description. Paul, tell us where they can find your YouTube channel or whatever link that you would like to send them to.
Sure. So yeah, Understanding Conspiracy, just Google it. Well, I won't come up on Google. You won't put me there on the top. You'll get how to understand why conspiracy theorists believe in conspiracies is what you'll get from the mainstream sources. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if you just type in Understanding Conspiracy on YouTube, I think I've cracked the algorithm now to that'll actually get shown on there. I did just hit 110,000 subscribers recently, so that's kind of
congrats. Man.
We got past the barrier somehow.
Yeah.
I think it just only took 11 years.
It's hard to get past that first 100,000. I don't know what it is, but we lingered right around the 100,000 mark for so long, and then as soon as it broke it's like, okay, let them have more subscribers. It's like they just did not want us to get there. It was so weird, but I'm glad you got there. That's awesome. It's a barrier right there because for some reason I don't know what it is, but it is a barrier. But congrats on that, man. That's awesome.
Thanks. It came to, it's like you said, it came to like a very slow snail's pace, that last 10,000. I don't know what happened. It just suddenly plummeted, you know. But
everybody, man. You're not the only one. There's like 5 other people that I know the same thing.
Yeah, but we got past it, so that's good. So yeah, go to YouTube and you will find me now. I do come up, and like I said, like the 700 videos that are spanning over 8 years, 10 years that you can go and check out. Actually, it's 11 years now in 2025. I'm losing track, but like it's all there, you know. And again, there's many tabs in the playlist section where I've kind of put all my work into different subheadings, and I do have sections on the channel like Tips for Truthers, my podcast, my Nephilim clown research, the Little Season stuff, exposing the occult stuff, and I have another channel as well called Understanding Creativity. I did just start this a few months ago, and that's already about to hit 10,000 subscribers, which is amazing. But that focuses more on the art world and art history, and where the occult lies within that, and where you'll find everything has not always been what it seems. And also we talk about the degradation of modern art and how that's a part of the agenda too, you know, and just beauty standards being destroyed and the rest of it. So that's kind of a side project of mine. If you're interested, go check that out. We have a great series on there of lectures from an Australian art historian, Susan, and she's wonderful, and she's been coming on doing presentations. Just I've learned so much myself as an art student just listening to her go on about these artists and their connections to things like MK Ultra, you know, and assassinations, and what they really meant by the artwork they were creating, their associations with secret societies and the occult. It's really, really, really interesting stuff. So check out that channel as well. Understanding Conspiracy, Understanding Creativity. And if you want a book, it's all on Amazon. And it comes in every format: Kindle, hardcover, paperback. And I did just release not long ago an audiobook, so you can get it as well on Kindle. What's it on? It's on Audible. There we go. It's all on one thing, and you can get it all just from the main Amazon Nephilim Look Like Clowns page. It's all there for you to select from, and that's it. That's where you find me.
And I'll have that link in the description for you guys. And if you click on that, I'm affiliate on Amazon. So check it out for sure. Go get it. I'm going to get it as soon as we get done here. It's always good to have books. I think that I mean, I do like listening to audiobooks when I'm driving. I love that. But the way things are going nowadays, it definitely pays to have a copy of the book in your hand, in my opinion, for research for your children. I homeschool, so most of the books that I get my children end up reading as well. Well, not all of them. I have one that might be old enough to read this book, but I love that kind of stuff. Anyways, thank you so much. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and make sure you guys share this with all your friends, because we're going to come back and we're going to do it again every week. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time.
I want you to get together.